Hi, boys and girls. So this week we're going to continue talking a little bit about theme like we have last week, the last 2 weeks. But this week we're going to focus on poetry. So instead of us reading like stories, we're going to read different types of poems and talk about theme and who's the point of view, who's telling the story, and a whole bunch of different things. So first of all, what is poetry? It's a type of literature written in verse and having rhyme and rhythm. So most poems have some sort of rhyme or rhythm to them. I did attach a brain pop video that goes a little bit more into detail about rhyme and rhythm and shows you some really good examples. The second thing that you'll see a lot when talking about poems is the words lines and stanzas. So lines are single stretches of a word or a phrase. So it's like the word the sentence straight across is the line. A stanza is a group when the words are grouped together. So the lines are grouped together and they're called stanzas. I'll show you an example of that in a poem in just a second. But you will see these two terms, lines and stanzas, a lot when people are referring to poems. Themes in poetry. Poems also have themes just like stories. So poems can have themes like prose. Ask yourself, what lesson did the character or narrator of the poem learn? What lesson can I learn from this poem? So it's the same. You figure out what the theme is the same way you do in a story. Poems are just shorter and usually have some sort of rhyme or rhythm to them. The other thing that poems have big time is figurative language. And we have talked a lot throughout the year with figurative language. So I'm going to have you guys throughout this week try and find different examples of figurative language in the different poems that you're going to read. And some examples, not all, are metaphors, similes, personification, idioms. Hyperbole is another big one that you will see with poems. And the last thing, I think this is the last thing, is making inferences. So we've done this in just regular literature, but it's when you use clues from the poem to draw conclusions that are not directly stated. So let's say you know that a character is sad, but they don't come out and say that they are sad. You know that they're sad. You know it's sad from like the mood of the poem or some of the things that they state. You're like, oh, this person ain't too happy. So you can draw an inference or a conclusion based on what the clues that the author has given you. Oh, I forgot one. And the last thing that we're going to be focusing on throughout this week with poetry is determining the speaker. So determining who is talking, who is the speaker of the poem. There's a couple things that you can ask yourself, and that's who's telling the story and what are the clues from the poem that determine that can help me to determine the speaker or who's talking. So those are just a few things that we're going to be focusing on throughout the week with poetry. It's something that we haven't really focused on at all this year, poetry. So I wanted to, and it's one of our skills that comes up in trimester 3. But today we're going to focus on just what poetry is, the lines and the stanzas, and the theme. So today we're going to read a poem. It's going to ask you, what do you think the theme is? And I'm going to attach a graphic organizer where you would put the text evidence on how you know. Okay, so that's it for today.